Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host as always, Daniel Levi, and joining me now is UFC middleweight Eryk Anders. Eryk, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Hey man, always a pleasure, man. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. So I know you saw Marlon Moraes versus Jimmy Rivera the other night. What'd you think about that?
Man, I thought it was a sick head kick, man. I was watching TV and, watching the fight, and, man, it was just a beautiful setup. And, man, just the sound that made, that shin off his dome, it was just, man, it sounded like somebody hitting a home run.
Man, the crazy thing about it is Jimmy had his hands up, and it's not like he really did anything wrong. It was more about what Marlon did right. And to snap a dude's 25 win streak, were you surprised that he didn't even get a chance to fight?
Man, that's the thing about, MMA. Anything can happen in any given moment. So, man, it was a beautiful setup. He made Jimmy Rivera cover up by throwing jabs, and in the middle of the jab, he threw a switch kick. So, man, beautiful setup by Marlon Moraes, and, it's it was just pretty cool to see somebody with that level of striking.
Man, it must be crazy for Jimmy because he trained that entire camp for that left kick, and then to get caught with it within 30 seconds. That must suck, man.
Man, it's but in my opinion though, to be honest, I think it's better to go out on your shield like Jimmy did. He got dropped and he was still trying to fight. And the ref stopped the fight like he should have. I think it was a good stoppage. Then to lose the way I lost, a real close decision after 5 rounds of fight. So, maybe they give him a rematch. Maybe he works his way back up, and gets that fight again. We'll see what happens if they ever fight again.
Well, you brought up your fight with Lyoto Machida. You got the opportunity to headline a UFC card with him in Brazil. It's funny because a year ago, you're fighting, less than a year ago, you're fighting Brendan Allen in the main event at LFA, and then you're in the UFC, you're fighting Rafael Natal, you're fighting Marcus Maluko, then all of a sudden you're in a main event with Machida. What was that whole experience like, man, being locked in the cage with a legend?
Man, it was cool, I didn't approach the fight as though I was fighting Lyoto the legend. I approached that fight just like I do every other fight. I was just a guy that was in my way trying to, make my way and crack that top 15. So, I don't think I wasn't starstruck. I wasn't like, oh my God, that's Lyoto Machida. I just, before the bell rang, I was like, man, that's the guy I got to knock out to get that number next to my name.
So, in training camp, that the dude's super elusive. So, when it actually came down to the fight itself, were you surprised with his distance and his movement and all that?
Man, not really. I kind of knew that he would skate around the skirt of the cage and, stay outside that little black circle and keep his back up against the cage. The thing about it was, I had an elbow injury leading into that fight. So, man, if you watch the fight, it was really hard for me to box him in with my right hand, just because, I was in a lot of pain. And so I was just relying too much on my left hand. And takedowns. And when I did rock him, I kind of smothered myself and tried to wrestle instead of taking a step back and connecting with some follow-up shots. So, man, definitely a good learning experience. Had elbow surgery, so I'm good to go and ready to rock.
So, in your opinion, is that injury part of the reason why the knockout didn't materialize?
Well, I think that, if you watch the fight, the only punch I threw was some jabs that I couldn't get full extension on, and my left hand. There was really nothing else. So I think when you're limited in the strikes that you can throw, it definitely hinders your performance. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and make excuses for myself. You got to adapt and overcome because what happens if I break my hand in the middle of a fight or something like that. So. I think the whole fight, the whole thing was just a great learning experience for me moving forward, and maybe not smother myself so much.
So, not smothering yourself, do you think that's the adjustment you'd make if you guys ever ran it back?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you look at the Rafael Natal fight, I kept my distance, I measured with my jab, and caught him with 2 lefts, which ended up knocking him out. So, that's definitely what I wanted to do with Lyoto. So I think that, I definitely could have been more active with my hands. And, I think the pressure's a virtue of mine. I think it would, makes me a great fighter is that, I don't rush things, but I think it kind of backfired in the fight against Machida.
Look, man, I know you're a game day competitor, and, you mentioned that you weren't starstruck at all, but, when you're in there with a guy like Brendan Allen, I know it's business as usual, but when you were in there with Machida, is it at all like, that's Machida?
Not at all. It could have been Marcus Perez, it could have been Rafael Natal, it could have been anybody. It really doesn't matter the name or the face of my opponent. I'm just trying to go in there, get them out of there, and move up the ranks and collect these checks. So, I wasn't able to get it done. I went back and watched the fight, and and with a completely unbiased opinion, I think that I won rounds 2, 3, and 4, and he got 1 and 5. So, my opinion really doesn't matter. So it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I scored it the same way, but as we know, the only opinion that matters is the 3 judges. But, when you're in there, do you take a lot of confidence out of that experience knowing that, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, you were an amateur fighter?
Man, I trained my ass off. So the level of success and, being the main event in my third UFC fight is no surprise to me. And if you know me, if you trained with me, then you would know that too. So, it's really no surprise to me, the success that I'm having, and, I'm just continuing to move up. I also think that Lyoto knocking out Vitor, definitely helps my case in that regard as well. So,
Yeah, no, speaking of that, on that event, man, your last 2 opponents actually both went out there and finished the fights. It's funny because everyone that listens to the show, Half the Battle, they know we bet the house on Marcus Perez to beat James Boknovic. He goes out there, finishes him in the first round, and obviously, Lyoto front kick knocked out Vitor. So what do you think when you watch your former opponents go out there and dominate like that?
I think it definitely makes me look better. And Lyoto, he's super savvy. He's been around the world. He's fought the who's who. He's done everything. So, he's very creative, and he's a vet. He's crafty, and he knows how to score a fight. So I think that he did the minimum that he could do in each round to win. So, a guy with 30 fights like he's had, he's been around forever. Those are just things that you pick up.
So you were an undefeated fighter going into that fight, and obviously, everyone has to take that first L. No one is exempt. So now that you did take your first pro L, did you kind of find out who really had your back? Because I would assume some people jumped off the bandwagon.
I tell you what, the amount of missed calls and text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram, people reaching out to me on social media is a lot less after a loss than it is a win. But at the same time, I think the internet thinks that I won that fight too. So, there's a lot of, back and forth, bickering and arguing between fans and, other fighters as well about who actually won the fight. So, maybe that's a better question for Jimmy Rivera, because
right.
There's no discrepancy in who won or lost that fight. So, it is what it is. I know in the world of sports, it's very much so, what have you done for me lately? So, you could be the greatest thing since whatever, one day take a few L's and then, you're back to being a nobody. So, I've already had that experience once with football. So, I learned, several years ago, what have you done for me lately? I think there's zero loyalty, especially in the world of sports.
So I heard you mention in another interview that, you have a 24-hour rule where, win or lose, you soak in all the feelings that's associated with that. What do those 24 hours entail, man?
Well, it was frustrating in the Lyoto fight, simply because it was super close, and I fought 5 rounds, and I could have fought, 10 more rounds at that pace. I wasn't breathing hard, wasn't fatigued at all, and I think that if a fight goes to a decision, you should go. You should be exhausted. You should have done everything that you could have to get that win, and I certainly didn't do that. So, I was just a little frustrated in myself with my performance and whatnot. But usually, I try not to eat the cheese. I've had a great deal of success in the sport, but if you believe everything everybody tells you and this, that, and the third, the best analogy I can think of is, eating the cheese. The rat who eats the cheese, he gets caught in that mousetrap. So, man, I try to, not really listen to it, good or bad, and, just show up in the gym as soon as possible, start training again, getting ready for the next guy.
So this is the second 5-round fight you've had, because obviously, for those that know, you went the 5-round distance with Brendan Allen and LFA. What kind of lessons did you take away from this one compared to the Brendan Allen fight now, knowing that this ain't the first time you've been the 5-round distance?
Well, the pace of those two fights are completely different. When I fought Brendan Allen, I dropped him in the first round, and those 3 rounds, rounds 1, 2, and 3, I was just on Brendan, trying to get him out of there. In the Lyoto fight, I didn't quite swarm him as much, but definitely smothered myself. So, just the pace of the fights were totally different, and it's hard for me to compare the two just because of the style of the opponent. Brendan Allen was very much so in my face, and especially at first early in the round, and he engaged a lot more versus Liotta, who just kind of danced around the outside of the cage and just kind of lit me up with his big toe there with leg kicks and whatnot. So, and I really don't know how they score the fights. Lyotta with the leg kicks, I don't know if those count as significant strikes or what, but I think if you just walk through somebody's strike, then it shouldn't count as a significant strike. But I know that I'm able to go 5 rounds no matter the pace of the fight. So, the Brendan Allen fight, I was like, you really don't know what 25 minutes feels like until you fight for 25 minutes. So I just feel like at whatever pace it is, I'll be in there.
Can you really blame Lyotta for having that kind of strategy, though? Because if you're a striker, obviously you don't want to stand and bang with a guy that has your kind of power. So, can you really blame him for hitting and running?
I don't blame Lyotta at all. He did what he had to do to win. Like I said, he's a crafty vet, and he's been knocked out in his previous 3 fights. So, probably standing in the pocket and banging with those guys isn't the smartest idea for Lyotta. So, like I said, he did what he had to do, and he kept me from doing what I wanted to do. So, kudos to him.
So, man, your next fight just got announced. You're taking on Tim Williams in Lincoln, Nebraska. What were your thoughts when you got the call that you're fighting Tim?
Tim and I were supposed to fight. I don't know, maybe not my debut, but I was definitely supposed to fight in my second fight. But he got suspended for 6 months for, I don't know if he tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs or he admitted to taking something, so they sat him down for 6 months, or there was something with the USADA that he couldn't fight for 6 months, and then I fought Marcus Perez. So, I'm familiar with Tim. I know he's coming off a brutal loss here in April, so looking to duplicate the results.
Yeah, he struggled with Oscar Pihota. Man, that Oscar kid, what do you think about him? Because he's actually fighting Gerald Meerschaert next.
Is it?
Yeah.
Man, I think that'll be a good fight. I really don't know much about Oscar, but I know that Gerald always shows up to fight. He's always game, and I think it's no secret that grappling is his game. I know that Oscar knocked out Tim Williams, but I don't know about his grappling pedigree. So I have a feeling that Gerald, try to maximize his opportunity and get it to the ground.
Oh yeah, Oscar is like a world champion black belt, so I was actually kind of surprised that he knocked out Tim. I thought he was going to choke him out.
Well, man, Tim's no slouch on the ground. I don't think, man. He's got several. I think all his wins are either decisions or submissions. So, he's probably not the most talented striker, but definitely something to watch out for on the ground.
Yeah, he definitely strikes me as like a workman kind of guy. Like, if you start to gas out on a guy like Tim Williams, he'll kind of grind you out that second and third round, that kind of thing. So, well, how does that, how do you feel about fighting that kind of guy? Because it's kind of different than your first 3 UFC opponents.
Well, man, I'm very confident in my gas tank. So, I fought 25 minutes twice already. So, I know the 15 won't be a problem. So, I'm always in tip-top shape, and, I make sure that my cardio is on point as well. So no matter the pace of the fight, I know he likes to be in your face and put people up against the cage and take them down and whatnot. So definitely something we'll game plan for. And no matter where the fight goes, man, I'm always confident no matter where the fight takes place, whether I'm on my back, on my feet, up against the cage, or have him on the cage. So I don't think there's a place in the fight that he can make me uncomfortable.
Obviously, you're ready for anything. But, when you visualize it, Eryk, are you seeing a knockout? Are you seeing a 3-round war? What do you envision, man?
Man, I'm always seeking the finish, and my left hand has been able to do that to a lot of people. So, like I said, he just got knocked out in April, and I just don't see him fully recovering and being able to spar and train and do all the things necessary to fight again, in just 6 months. So, I think when you do that, your chin is definitely more susceptible. You're definitely more susceptible to get knocked out. So, man, it's no secret, man. I'm definitely going there and trying to put hands on him. But if it goes to the ground, I'm cool with that. If he's like Marcus Perez and he can just take it, then whatever. We'll beat him up for 3 rounds. So it really doesn't matter to me where the fight goes, but I'm definitely always looking to knock somebody out.
You think you'll ever run into a guy like Marcus Maluka again? Because, obviously I had to study that fight and watch it a million times for when I was betting on Marcus. And, man, the dude's tough as hell.
Yeah, Marcus, man, he showed tremendous heart and toughness and, got a head full of rocks for sure. So, I'm sure there's plenty of guys like that in the middleweight division that, they can just take it. And then, some guys are looking to take it so that they can give it. So, man, like I said, I'm always confident in my preparation for a fight, including my cardio. So, no matter where a fight takes place or how long it takes me to, get somebody out of there, then, I'll be ready for that.
In your opinion, man, how much time should you take off after a brutal KO? Because I got a couple examples. Obviously, you got the Bisping example where, I know it was a submission, a GSP, but between you and me, he definitely got concussed in that fight. Then he comes back against Kelvin a couple weeks later, gets absolutely starched. But then you see a guy like Frankie Edgar, he got knocked out against Ortega. He comes back a month later and he beats Cub Swanson. So I've seen both sides of the coin. In your opinion, how much time should someone take off after getting brutally knocked out?
Well, I think it depends on the knockout. Like Frankie, did he get slept or did he get like TKO'd?
It's officially a KO, but it's kind of a TKO.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, if you get dropped, like either way, man, I think you should take like 6 months before you start even sparring again and taking hits to the head in practice, let alone in a fight with a 4-ounce glove. So, I hope that never happens to me. But that's kind of the life of the fighter. You fight long enough, the knockout is always looming. So I know if it happens to me, it's going to be at least 6 months before I even start sparring again. And when you don't spar, you kind of lose the timing and the range of things. So, of course, I always hit mitts and do jiu-jitsu and whatnot. But, then it takes a few more months to get your timing and range and stuff down when you start sparring and whatnot. So, I don't know. It's up to everybody else. I can tell you myself, it'd be more than 6 months before I fought again.
Yeah, no, and I really respect that. I think that's smart. What's it kind of like, back in your football days? Because I know you guys were, slamming heads and people were definitely getting concussed, and then you get to play the next weekend. Do you feel like MMA is kind of a safer sport?
Well, I think football, nobody, like when I was coming out, that's when all the concussion protocol and research and stuff was going into, concussions and head injuries and stuff. So nobody really knew what they didn't know kind of thing. MMA, I think that, you can be your own worst enemy. You got guys who get in the, slug, especially at the lower level, because, you can jump on a bunch of different shows all the time, on the regional circuit and whatnot. UFC, it's a little bit hard to fight as frequently as you could on the, on the local circuit. But, I think it's all depends on how guys train, man. Like, I love the gym that I train at because, man, I just don't we do a lot of training, a lot of mitt work, and we definitely spar and whatnot, but, man, we're just not in there trying to kill each other. And, I just don't take a whole lot of damage in sparring so that when I go into a fight, I'm healthy. I'm good to go. I don't have a concussion going into a fight. With the exception of the Lyoto fight, I don't go into a fight injured or hurt or whatever. So I think it just depends how you train, who you train with, and the gym that you train out of.
So, obviously, you're not the type to make excuses, but going into that Lyoto fight, is it at all like, man, this is a main event. I can't pull out of this fight?
Oh, man, if I'm able to fight, I'm going to fight, Obviously, if I, tear a ligament or, break something or whatever, and I can't fight. But if I'm able-bodied, I'm definitely willing, so I'm going to get in there regardless.
So, this weekend, man, the middleweight belt is on the line. Obviously, Robert Whittaker is defending against Yoel Romero. Now, I know the first time they fought, you picked Whittaker. You were right. Now, the second time, it's going down about a year later, and I heard that Robert Whittaker had a serious staph infection. It was mistreated. He had to pull out of a title fight with Luke Rockhold, as you remember. Now he's coming back, so I really don't know what the status of him is. All I know is that Yoel is a 2-1 underdog. What's your opinion on the rematch?
I think it's really difficult to beat somebody twice, especially with somebody with, the power and athleticism that Romero has. And I'm with you. I don't know how much, his injuries and infections and stuff are going to hindered his training camp and all that other stuff. So, and I'm not really sure of the timeline either, of when he got hurt and got all that stuff, neither how long ago that was. So I do know one thing: both guys are going to show up. They're going to fight. Hopefully, Romero makes weight, and we'll have ourselves a title fight. But man, it's hard for me to bet against Romero, or bet against Whittaker. But man, I think I'm gonna go with Romero in this one.
So, man, this middleweight division, because you and I have been talking for a while, and a year or two ago, we were mentioning how, the top guys, the Weidmans, the Jacares, and the Rockholds, but now there's a whole new wave of middleweights coming up. You got guys like Kelvin, you got guys like Jack Hermanson, you got Paulo Costa, you got yourself. So what's your opinion of the emerging middleweight division?
I think it's awesome, man. You got a lot of high-level guys that, have youth left, and they're only going to continue to get better. And then we're getting exciting matchups like Uriah Hall and Paulo Costa. I think that's a good matchup. I think it'll be a fun one for the fans. Romero, Whittaker, I think Rockhold's done with 85. So man, there's a lot of young guys coming up, a lot of hungry guys as well. I think the one that's slipping under the radar the most is Carla de Zapata.
He's good.
It's good. He's got some notable wins. And, man, these guys are hungry, man. They're not playing. They're going out there. They're getting finishes. They're putting on exciting fights. So, it's fun to watch and be a part of.
Who would you pick if Jack Hermanson fought Elias?
I really haven't seen too many of Jack's fights. But, Elias, he's a lot like, I don't know, man. He finds ways to win. Whether he points a guy up like he did Dan Kelly or he takes it to a guy like the last little buddy he fought in England, So, I don't think he's a dumb fighter. I think he's, has a good fight IQ. Probably not the most skilled fighter. Definitely uses cardio as a weapon. So, it's hard because I don't know really too much about Jack, but, I think Elias beats a lot of guys just off cardio and IQ alone.
So I know you saw that Darren Till weight cut video, and there was a lot of outrage in the MMA community. But for guys like myself, guys like you that have been around the scene for a long time, I mean, dude, I see that shit on the regional scene every single month. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. How did you kind of respond when you or react when you saw that video?
Yeah, don't do that. Don't record yourself going through misery like that. There's no need. No one should record that. Now Dana White's talking about they're gonna move the weigh-ins back to 4:00, which kind of fucks everybody up. Just be a professional, make weight. Nobody cutting weight sucks for everybody, regardless if you cut 10 pounds or 30 pounds. It's not fun. So people don't need to see that. No one feels sorry for. I don't feel sorry for you. You know, I think I cut the most weight out of any middleweight. You know, and if I can cut the weight, then, you know, I think everybody else should be able to do the same. So, you know, I have no sympathy or anything like that for, you know, that's a choice that he made to fight at 170. If it sucks that bad and it's that grueling, then fight at 185. You know, so, you know, you're not gonna see a video of me, you know, cutting weight because, you know, I don't do all that. You know, I think he's a little extra. You know, I think he knew he wasn't gonna make weight, so he kind of played for the cameras a little bit. You know, how many other times have people recorded his weight cut? You know, so whatever. I just think that, you know, you don't have to broadcast everything. You know, it's not fun for anybody.
Yeah, some things are definitely better left unsaid. That's for sure, man. So look, before I let you go, Eryk, 3 fights into your UFC career. You're already a main event fighter. Now you're getting this showcase fight in Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, how do you feel about your career progression, man?
You know, I like the way it's going. You know, obviously a bit of a dip from Machida to Tim Williams, but, you know, still looking to go out there and make the most of the opportunity. You know, I think you take a loss, you know, it's like a speed bump along the road. But I think an impressive victory, a knockout, a submission, definitely a finish, I'll be able to call my own shot again like I did Machida. So looking to go out there and get a finish and, you know, pick up where I left off with Machida.
Well, Eryk, man, I always appreciate the time. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. It's always a pleasure, man. The fans can follow you at Eryk Anders. Eryk, any message for the fans before we go?
Hey, man, y'all be sure to tune in August 25th, Lincoln, Nebraska. I think it's Fox Sports 1. Looking to go out there and put on a show for you guys.
Eryk, you have a great day, my man.
Hey, appreciate it, brother.